What's going on there, niece, nephew? We are here with my partner. He is based in China. We have done previous China content, and he's got some wild stories. So I thought today we would talk a little bit about some of the craziest stuff he's seen. I've seen some crazy stuff living in Cambodia, Vietnam, Thailand, Laos, around this part of the world, Nepal. But he has been in China for like a pretty long time. So I think he could speak pretty creditably about some really interesting things that have happened. And I think today we'll just talk about things that he is like aware of and knows to be factually true that they happen. So not just crazes or things that appeared in Chinese media, but things that happened like around where he is in China and things that he's actually witnessed or been like near to. So I think it'll be an interesting conversation. And I want to remind you guys that the video is sponsored by Safety Wing. If you need a low-cost health insurance and you're thinking about heading overseas, they give a great transitional, low-cost health insurances that cover a lot of stuff and can keep you from getting jammed up as an expat. Even if it's not your long-term solution, it can help you get started in a new country. And we also want to remind you that we also offer hourly consulting. We do expat relocation. We have packages if you're trying to come out to China. My partner here can line you up with employment, even if you don't have a degree. But preferably, if you do have a degree, he can definitely give you a large choice of jobs that will pay you much better than you'd be able to achieve on your own. So today, I think we're going to launch right into the topic. So what is some of the craziest stuff you have? First off, how long have you been in China? How long have you been coming to China? And then let's talk a little bit about some of the craziest things you've experienced over that time.
I've been in and out of China for a long time. I think the first time I came was 2010. I don't know if you add all of it up together. 5 years, 6 years, 7 years. I don't know, kind of sprinkled along since 2010, something like that. When you think of crazy things, there's a lot of stuff you see videos of. Something that seemed to be a little bit popular right now, but kind of got scuffed off by the Chinese censorship, was a dead guy floating in looks like a pond. You know, Chinese people, if they see a dead guy sitting somewhere, they're not going to touch him. They're not going to help him. Because if they touch the guy, they're going to get blamed for it. Then the police is going to arrest them. They're going to have to pay someone money for the dead person or whatever. They're going to get all the blame. So if there's someone in China and there's something terrible happening, they're going to walk by, maybe take a picture or video on their phone and go on. But yeah, there's a recent video going around of a dead guy floating in the pool, or not the pool, in a pond, and there's an older guy sitting there fishing right next to the body. He looks over, sees the body, and then just cast out right next to it. That's something I haven't seen personally other than the video. But I think some of the crazy things. This is a video I sent you just that happened, I think last month, maybe 2 months ago. There's a food delivery service. You know, you send a message, they get your food and they bring it to you. A lot of these people don't want to go through, like don't want to walk all the way to your house. There's a main gate in every entrance. So they'll want to ride their little scooter in there. So the little security guards, their only job is to push a button and open this gate. For some reason, they've got a rule. If you're fast food delivery, they won't do that. They make them walk. The fast food delivery man got into a little spiff with the security guard. This was insane. The security guard, I guess, had some kind of temper tantrum, got out with a knife and started stabbing the guy, stabbed him to death. He's laying there dead, and he just keeps going at it. And you see all the Chinese people just walking by and looking at it. Eventually, I think someone comes over and tries to help him out when they realize he's bleeding to death. Something crazy that happened to me pre-COVID is everybody lives in these buildings. I think at the time I was living in the 18th floor, and I had my little scooter down below. I went down on the elevator, started to get on my scooter, and I realized, oh man, I left my cell phone. And I saw some red stuff on my scooter, and I'm like, what is this? Maybe someone spilled a drink or paint. I didn't know what it was. I didn't think much of it, just because people spit and dump stuff all over anywhere. So I went up to my apartment, got my phone. When I came down, my bike's still sitting there, and there's a ton of people like standing around with their phones taking a picture. First, I thought they were taking a picture of me. Right over this entrance, right above me, which would be the second floor, there's kind of like a little awning that sticks out. And whenever I stepped back a few steps and looked at this awning, I realized what was on my bike and what this red stuff, it was blood dripping from a guy that was laying on the awning right above us. And everyone's sitting there taking pictures. So I went back in the elevator, went back up to the 18th floor and looked down. A man had committed suicide and he had jumped from one of the upper levels and landed right on top of this awning and was, I mean, he wasn't flat, but he was pretty, there was quite a bit of blood. There was a pool of blood dripping down from him. That was kind of shocking to see, I would say.
I had a similar thing happen here. We had a guy living in our building that it's unclear exactly why he got shot, but he ended up getting shot right outside of my window by a group of Vietnamese. So he was a Vietnamese guy here in Cambodia, and I'm not entirely sure what he was involved in, but a group of Vietnamese people jumped out of a car, shot him, and then he ran away kind of bleeding and fell right outside my window. And I had thought that he was a jumper also, because that happens in Saigon, when I lived in Saigon for a long time also, that is not uncommon. But yeah, so I can relate a little bit. It's a little crazy. What about things with foreigners? Have you seen any crazy situations involving foreigners in China?
Not usually. And if there is, it's something that no one's going to know about. You did just mention something, and that reminded me. Just 2 days ago, this is another thing that a lot of people don't know about. It was completely cut off from the news in China. I don't know if it leaked out into the rest of the world. In Beijing, there was I would say it's a mass murder. I don't know how many people were killed, but some guy in a car just sped up and drove over into the bike lane, ran over a bunch of people on scooters. I don't know how many people died. I did see a couple videos of it before it was kind of removed from the internet, just of bikes and people kind of smashed in this car that had went through. That seems to be like it's becoming more popular. I mean, there's no mass shootings. If people are going to go out and murder, they get on these cars and they drive into a big crowd of people and just run them over.
Well, yeah, I think it's a silly argument when people try to say that guns are like the problem in like the United States. I think largely, people will find a way to kill each other if they want to kill each other, and if society is collapsing and is not doing well, that can manifest in that way. I'm surprised to hear that in China, because I mean, Southeast Asia, I guess it's not uncommon for people to bottle up and to occasionally go nuts. There was a big shooter in Thailand, and that was like about a year or so ago, and that was quite big news because the Thais actually have the most mass shootings out of any country in Southeast Asia.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they're the most armed also, but it's still very like far from what's going on in the United States. Where I don't blame the weapons at all. I look at the society, and I could say, it sounds like that's what's going on in China. Do you think that people are happy in China, or do you think that society is starting to reach kind of a boiling point? Or
I don't think people have always been that happy. Over the past few years, right pre-COVID, I was starting to see a lot of people that would go to the U.S. and study, and they would want to go back to China. That's kind of going away. I mean, a lot of people are there, and their parents are paying big money for them to learn English because they want their kid to go to another school, like in the U.S. or in Canada. They want to get out of here. There was a time for about 2 years. I'm not even going to mention where or anything about that, but one of my contacts was helping Chinese people get pregnant, go to the U.S. and give birth in the U.S. So whenever they were around 7 months pregnant to 8 months pregnant, kind of depending on their condition, they would fly to the U.S. and give birth in the States, so their child would be a U.S. citizen. Then they could get a green card and stay. When Trump came into office, that was scrapped out. You were not able to do that. So there was a handful of people that were frustrated with Trump because of that, because that was like a complete business that was going on here.
have you ever seen situations where foreigners ended up in jail or in trouble with the police? Because I would also call that as kind of crazy.
I've seen police come into a bar. There's like a foreigners bar. There's a handful where all the white people go. I say white people. all the foreigners go and kind of hang out. You can kind of have like hamburgers and more of like Western food. I've seen the police like just go in there randomly and arrest foreigners. I don't know if you, yeah, I would say arrest, take them back to uh, like the police station and question them. They've got to do drug tests to see, have you smoked any weed? If you do, you're going to be stuck in jail. Where do you work? They check through their paperwork, make sure they've got legit everything. Then they'll let you go. If not, they'll be, jailed. Um, some of them were there for a few days. Some of them were there, stuck there for a couple months. But this is, I don't see it. I mean, maybe I see it with my eyes, but if you get your cell phone out for something, the police are like, delete that right now. Let me see your phone. Um, so yeah, if it's something with foreigners that happen, I hear a lot. I don't see it. I don't see videos or anything.
All right. So you would say the craziest stuff you've seen is just mostly things that pop up on the Chinese social media and then are relatively quickly taken down. You haven't seen anything too crazy directly in the city you're in?
Yeah, I've seen some car accidents. Nothing. A few months ago, there was some snow. I would say there was 60 car, 70 car pile up, which was wild because some of them were upside down, flipped over.
Oh, was this on like a super highway? What was the situation?
Oh, it was a couple miles away from my place. It was on one of the bigger highways. I think the speed limit might have been, it might be 70 or 80 kilometers per hour right there. It was just snow and ice, and people don't know how to drive on snow or ice in this area. It's kind of rare. And then, yeah, that happened. I've seen some people get hit by cars. Um, I've hit people on my bike. One time, I mean, this was kind of my fault. I was riding on the wrong side of the road, which there's no loss or whatever. Um, Someone jumped out in front of me. I hit them, and they fall on the ground, and they just roll on the ground screaming. And the first thing I think is, oh my gosh, this guy's suing me, and I'm going to have to sell everything I've got, because that's what people do to get money from you. So he rolled around, and I walk over to him. I don't run. And he looks up at me, and he sees I'm a white guy. And he says, oh, white red, which is like, oh, a foreigner. And I'm like, oh no. And he just stands up like normally. I'm okay. I'm okay. I was like, okay. This guy was about to like really screw me over if I was a Chinese person, but then he saw I was a white guy and decided to kind of let it go. So I think I got a little lucky on that one. But yeah, I see stuff like that. Car accidents, bike accidents, people run across the road and they shouldn't. But people do that all over here.
So what are some of the craziest things that people in China think like about the West? Because that would also kind of have like, an impression on you that would make you say, oh, wow, that's kind of a bizarre thing.
People think in the West that if you're kind of like in a lone area, I've known some Chinese people that went to the U.S. and they were terrified because when they got there, there was like no people around their apartment, and it was quiet. And so they're like, oh man, I don't know why that makes them. They're just terrified of emptiness. I guess there's not a lot of traffic or a lot of movement. That kind of scares them. Something that they usually think that it's always anti-gun. I hear a lot of stuff about how guns are so dangerous and how the U.S. needs to stop letting all these people have guns.
We stop having guns, we're going to end up just like them.
Yeah, but they don't know about that. They don't know about this the person that ran over all these people in Beijing. I've got one buddy that knew about it, and he's the same guy that got some of the video that I showed you about the stabbing. He's also a fast food delivery guy, speaks awesome English, and it seems like all he does is like bash the Chinese government. Pretty much every day it's me and him. I'm not going to tell you where we meet, but we share information about some different stuff like this. He's got a few other connections, and he kind of knows what to avoid if you're coming into the country. I'm kind of aware of that too. So we talk to each other, and there's always stuff like this going on. And he's usually able to get a video because he's out and about quite a bit. Today, something happened and I missed it. I was on the road and I heard something, and I heard someone scream in Chinese, like, F your mom. And I was like, oh man, I got to see what this is, but I couldn't find it.
So it is kind of a dark side to China. There is a very dark underbelly to what you've seen on a surface level, just, doing business for visas and for employment out there.
There is, it's just so hidden. If you come here and you don't speak the language, they can be talking about anything you don't know, and they probably are. Anything that's bad. This is the weird thing. It's like Chinese people, they're proud to be Chinese for 5,000 years, they'll tell you, they've got this long history. And if there's Chinese people sitting there talking, they'll talk about how bad their government is. They'll bash their government. But if you're a foreigner, no, they will not say anything bad about their country.
So it's a little hard for you to even know what's the real sentiment of the people overall. But because you speak Chinese, it's been easier for you to kind of get a perception on that, right?
Yeah, I could definitely hear what they're complaining about now. I mean, even if you're like at the gym or a coffee shop, I can hear stuff occasionally. And after COVID, I think I told you this before, after COVID was the first time probably I was here for a couple weeks. I think I had 2 or 3 different people come up to me and complain about the government, about the Chinese government. I've never had a Chinese person complain to a foreigner about the Chinese government. That blew my mind. So people are definitely fed up with it, and they're more willing to complain than they've ever been before.
Well, I've experienced similar with a lot of Southeast Asia compared to when I first started coming here like 11 years ago as a tourist versus when I started living here and up until now. I do also see people are more open about their criticisms than they were in the past. And I guess that's good to hear that China isn't such a totalitarian state to where I guess, he can still kind of run around and at least have some opinion, it's not reached the level of North Korea. That's good.
I would say if I hadn't invested so much time learning Chinese and I didn't know so many people here, and going to Vietnam looks pretty nice to me. And the money in China is better than Vietnam, but
sure,
Vietnam looks nice. If the salary was double, I may pack up and go there someday. I don't know.
But crazy things happen in Vietnam too. Like I've seen people get hit by trucks. I've seen people commit suicide. There was a Korean guy who murdered his business partner, chopped him up, threw him in some fucking package in the river. There's a woman who got drunk and she smashed her car into a bunch of people and killed a bunch of people on motorbikes and then just paid money and never went to jail. I know of a situation adjacent to me where I didn't know him personally, but he trained at my jiu-jitsu club before I started at that club. And he had murdered someone, a motorbike taxi guy, choked him to death. And he got out of prison because they knew who to facilitate with. And I think he only did 6 months in prison for a murder and was able to leave Vietnam. So, yeah, there's things like that happening.
One of the first times I was here, there was a guy that he was drunk. He ran over, I think he killed a pregnant woman. She was 8 or 9 months pregnant, and a few other people with his car. And when the police pulled him out, stopped him, he said, like, so-and-so, whichever government official, is my son, or is my father. I'm his son. I think he got off the hook too with almost nothing.
Yeah, that's the thing. And like similar to what you said before about how like people just won't get involved. Like you'll have these situations where like a guy is like beating his girlfriend like in the streets in Saigon and like nobody will intervene. Or eventually maybe somebody will if it's getting really bad. But for the most part, most people just don't get involved. There's also sort of the same idea where if you get into an accident, they're going to try to get money. So a lot of people don't even stop. Like they just hit somebody and they just keep going because they know if they stop that they're going to have to pay for their medical bills or whatever. So, you see a bit of that. It sounds very similar to China. I think the main difference would be that, in terms of infrastructure and also in terms of the control of the state, like China's much more like their government is more omnipresent. They have more advanced technology. I think they have more control over the state and the population, whereas Vietnam is still not a democratic place, but I think the people do enjoy a certain level of freedom and there is a certain level of internationalism. And even Cambodia, like, this country, for example, has a lot of challenges. But again, it's a relatively easy place for you as a foreigner. If you stay out of the politics, they really sort of just let you live and let you do what you need to do. They're not unreasonable for visas. And but for teachers, it's not that good. I think for teachers, where you're at is really the ideal spot if they have a degree, and if they don't have a degree but they're willing to roll some dice. And I think for people who are still kind of in the gray area, like Vietnam is one of the last places where you can still make like pretty good money, and they can sort out a work permit for you still, like even if you don't have documents. So I don't want to harp on only the negative, guys, but for this video, we just wanted to point out some of the darker sides of his experiences with China.
I do want to ask, in Vietnam, I don't think there's near the cameras, the CCTV setups that there are in China.
And there's many, but a lot of them are private. They're like a business's CCTV.
I thought a lot of them didn't work until I went into some of these like little government I don't want to say government run areas, but everything's a government run. Just like a small security area. And I was blown away to see probably 200 cameras. They're all working in this huge room. You can sit there and watch everything. And I realized anywhere I go on my bike, anywhere I'm in my neighborhood, any elevator I'm in, I could sit there and see every single person where everyone was going. Clear as day. If someone wanted to know where I was right now, they could get on that and rewind and watch when I went, and you could watch me right through the elevator, right to where I park, right in the gate. All the cameras are connected. And that kind of put a chill, you know. I didn't expect that, but that is something in the big cities in China and that China has, and it's up and working.
Yeah, I'd say you see some CCTV in Vietnam, but a lot of it's going to be like business owners have their own CCTV, and then if something were to happen, the police would just find out whose house it is and get the video that they need to get, basically. But like every business in every house has CCTV. I mean, literally, even small businesses that sell bubble tea have CCTV. I mean, it's going to be, impossible to operate in some of these developing countries and not have that type of security.
Yeah, sure. Again, that's not government spying on you, though. That's kind of how I feel with this.
Sure, it's very different. And I think that's another thing that's interesting that we point out, guys, is that this is one of the reasons why I chose Southeast Asia over China, was because even when I was there, and this is before it got very crazy under the current administration, it was the beginning of his administration, it was still just uncomfortable for me. Like I remember walking through the park and walking by the beach and seeing cameras on me, even at the beach, even in the park, even, there's just cameras constantly. And when I got back to Vietnam, I'm like, okay, it's dusty. There's a lot of issues. There's no infrastructure, but I feel a lot more relaxed, and the Vietnamese people have a warmer feeling about me. And I don't know, it felt more comfortable. I was willing to take less money. And instead of making a high salary as a teacher, I just went into starting my own business. So I don't want to sway you guys from going to China. I know a lot of people who have made a lot of wealth in China and have been able to buy homes, start businesses. But I also want you guys to be aware of some of the stuff that's going on and some of the crazy things my friend here has seen. So if you enjoyed this video, please smash the like button. Please subscribe and share. Once again, I don't want to sour anybody. I just want to present some of the negatives because, I don't want you to just think that, we're selling you a dream that, oh, come to China, everything's going to be amazing. If you work with us, guys, and our consulting service for relocation in China, you're going to get straight facts so that you can make the right choice for you. We believe in giving adults the information that they need and the tools and the network they need to achieve the goals they want to achieve in these countries. So if that sounds good to you, contact me on the Facebook fan page in the description below. Thank you for watching. Subscribe and share, and make sure to brush your teeth.